Welcome back to More Than a Lumpy Jumper. It's our Easter mini-series for over the break. Have your inner thoughts ever leaked out onto your face? Do you struggle, like Angela Merkel, not to roll your eyes at idiocy? Do you have a resting bitch face or a degaff face? How can we appear professional when our face is an open book? Intrigued? Come and have a listen to School Your Face.
So, Bridget, is your face doing the talking or your inner voice currently?
Yeah, I think we had a chat a while ago where you'd talked about the fact that your face often expressed what you were thinking, even though maybe it wasn't as diplomatic as it could be. And I think that I have a similar penchant or trait. Yeah, my face does betray my inner thoughts a lot. I think we were talking about authenticity maybe, but obviously there are times when if we're trying to encourage discussion, that showing on your face that you think someone's an idiot is not necessarily the best way forward. So we'd decided we were going to put together this short episode, just a set of gifts to talk about or to help people maybe find ways to control that. So yeah, I have to say I've struggled a little bit in terms of how I manage it because I really don't. So I'm going to wait and hear what you have to say in terms of, I suspect there may be some somatic practices that might help. And so because I was struggling so much, my first gift is a little bit, maybe sarcastic, which is that it's a 10-minute face yoga video to, if you're going to make faces, then your face might as well be lovely toned and beautiful.
I love that. Yes, I think that's a very good one. And it doesn't necessarily need to be tongue-in-cheek, because the whole thing is that giving your face a good workout, I'm sure, is enabling me to try and keep wrinkles at bay as I get older. That's my excuse anyway. But you're absolutely right. That's what we were talking about, because I think I said my inner voice leaked onto my face quite regularly. And so when I started looking for gifts for this, the first thing I thought, well, actually, I'm going to try and write a list of all the places when I really let my face take over. And so my husband would say, I can never play it cool when we're buying a car or house hunting or anything where I need to be going into a negotiation. If I've loved something, I think, the salesman will know that they can charge me anything because I've given myself away. So I certainly don't ever play cards either, because I don't have a poker face. But then other things where I may well have come unstuck is, and I know that my husband's does as well, when I say to him, do I look all right in a particular outfit? I can tell, because his inner voice has definitely leaked onto his face. So the whole thing about, does my bum look big in this? Not a good thing to be asking anyone who can't control their facial expression. When you receive a crappy present, when you're trying to do gratitude, thinking, why on earth have I been bought this? Definitely when someone upsets me, they know wholeheartedly, immediately, before I've even opened my mouth. Scary movies. But the best one I came up with, because I'm not going to keep going on all of this, but when someone falls over or somebody, I don't want anyone ever to be injured, but I remember when somebody trapped their ears in the doors of a closing tube. And honestly, I nearly wet myself on the train, because you could see that their ears were still throbbing red when they managed to pull their head through. And I literally just fell about laughing. I mean, this poor bloke. So yes, my first gift may well be to write a list of all of the times when categorically you can't hide it on your face. But that took me down a line of inquiry, and I came up with a TED Talk called How Face Language Reveals Your True Identity. Honestly, I was like, this is awesome. Because this guy, Eric Standop, was saying, we as a culture, definitely a westernized culture, will say to people, what are you doing, or what do you do? Yeah. And that's how we identify. And I know we're going to do another a little gift thing on this, so I won't do any spoilers. But it's the usual question of what do you do or what are you doing, rather than who are you? And so he was saying that we don't often live with our true identity because we're living in a role, when in fact, the best source of data is our face. So eyes, what eyes are doing, your mouth, your wrinkles, your piercings, the list is endless. You know, your coloration, if you tend to go red with certain things, all of those sort of things. It's just this massive source of data. And so face language that we basically have from the day we were born. And so the more we practice with other people or looking at people's faces, the more we learn about people. So I'm going to do 2 in 1, because there's this TED talk that I'm going to give, which introduces this, how face language reveals your true identity. So I carried on down my little baby rabbit hole with this, and also came up with a book by Mac Fulfer and Brenda Bentz, which is The Power of Face Reading.
Nice. I'm going to have to check those out. That's fascinating. And then obviously brings in all kinds of issues about when you change your face or when you sort of have tweaks and stuff done, about what that does to your being.
That whole element about, you know, I remember always having a laugh with my daughter Ella about a film. I think it's something really, it's a real naffy Disney film, like a Cinderella story or something. And this woman who they said, well, you don't look very angry. And she said, I am angry. I've just had Botox. And of course, she's just got this massive grin and her face isn't moving. So absolutely to that point, difficult if your face isn't moving at all to be reconstructing that. The other one, if I may, which is along this same line, and this is a children's book, but I've bought it because it's really lovely, and it's called What's That Look on Your Face by Catherine Snodgrass, and she's written a little poem and showing a facial expression to help children learn about different facial expressions for people. And it was written mainly as well because, of course, those children with learning difficulties or somewhere on the spectrum really find it difficult to read other people's faces. So I thought it's a complete back to basics, but yeah, it might be for children, but it wouldn't be any bad idea just to get back into that from an adult perspective as well. So you've got 3 different levels. You can go right from the basics, from the childlike poetry and looking at it in its very basic form. There's the introduction of face language, and then this book in between. So I think I found myself a new pet topic because I thought it was so interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a whole other rabbit hole that got me thinking, because I hadn't thought about that angle of it at all, and it's sparking some other things that I'm recalling, but I can't remember them well enough to be able to say them now. So I'm going to have to go and do a bit more research. Maybe we'll do a longer episode on this, since we both have the potential to dive down rabbit holes or go into Wonderland together.
Brilliant.
So I had looked at this also in terms of, effectively, when you say that your inner monologue is leaking, it's an emotional response as well. I think that most of the time that our inner voice leaks, or that we're trying to prevent it from leaking, are in situations that we might call difficult conversations. I know that we don't try and use that word, but for the sake of it, for this point, I think maybe difficult conversations is where face leakage or inner voice leakage is sometimes not optimal, and that it's an element of your emotions, and being able to manage your emotions in a time where it's helpful to be able to be thinking maybe sometimes more logically. And so my second gift is an HBR article called How to Control Your Emotions During a Difficult Conversation.
Nice.
It has a picture of a broken tennis racket as the sort of intro to it. But it talks about really a lot of things that we've touched on a number of times in terms of how you just gather your thoughts and your emotions to be able to express yourself and engage in a useful and effective manner, rather than just losing your temper, being dismissive, any of those things. And of course, we go back to real basics like breathing, taking breaths. And I know that, you know, we've talked about this before. You particularly have talked about this before in terms of your somatics, and then focus on your body, because we tend to be up all in our head And so it's all about sometimes that standing up and walking can activate the thinking part of your brain rather than the emotional part. I know that I used to, when I was a barrister, letting out massive top tips now, I used to write down what I was feeling on a pad. I had to make sure that my client or my instructing solicitor couldn't see it and the judge couldn't read it upside down or anything. But I would be writing, "Fuck off, you're an idiot. Oh, shut up, stop talking." Really, I'd just write it in big capital letters, or I'd be scribbling sort of my screaming voice on the inside onto a piece of paper, just so that I could still keep my face to not reflect the fact that, or, you know, not rolling the eyelids and all of those, or rolling eyes and that sort of thing. So it was a way of getting rid of those feelings. But the suggestion in the article is to have a little mantra so that in your head you can repeat something that you can focus on so that your lips can stop curling. And then if necessary, taking a break, sort of just going, you know, I'm just going to have to go and get a cup of water or something. Just if you are still struggling to be able to manage, corral all of those feelings going around in your body, that you just go out and take a deep breath, do your power pose, do your Wonder Woman pose, whatever it is you need to do, and then come back in.
I'd like to admit as well that I really hope that nobody has ever got hold of my notebook whilst I've been at work. Because I used to do exactly the same thing to keep my face straight in terms of what the hell are they talking about? I don't agree with anything that they're saying, blah, 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 so that I could actually get it out, so that I could try to then articulate something slightly more constructive.
Yeah, I can imagine. I used to just ball everything up and throw it away so that there was no evidence. My final gift is another article about mastering facial expressions. And this is really more to do with recognizing what your face looks like. And in a way, a bit linked to the child's book you were talking about, Bobby.
Yeah.
Is to look in a mirror and see what your face does and what it looks like when you're thinking certain things. So starting with a neutral face and, you know, maybe what we might call our resting bitch face, to see whether or not you are in fact neutral. Because there are people who, unfortunately, their neutral face actually looks quite aggressive or angry or discontented. And so it helps if you know that, and you can maybe make a joke of it or whatever and say, this is what my face looks like when I have no particular feeling about anything. And then look at, you know, think something happy, smile. Does it look genuine? Does it look scary? Does it look angry? Some people look angry when they smile because it's more of a growl. And then think of something where you're annoyed, or maybe you could put something in front of yourself and watch what your face does. There's a really funny Tracy Ullman sketch where she is, menopause brain. Who was the previous president, prime minister of Germany? Lady.
Oh, God. Oh, my God. Now it's catching. I can't think.
Angela Merkel. Okay.
Yes.
So it's a sketch with Tracy Ullman where she plays Angela Merkel, and her assistant, who's another comedian whose name I should know, but I can't remember. And they are trying to prevent her from rolling her eyelids whenever she hears the male politicians talking bollocks. And so they have to keep practicing. And so her assistant then pretends to be various different politicians. And she's trying very hard not to roll her eyelids. And then it ends up with an imitation of Donald Trump. And she just fails miserably. And because she's holding her eyelids so carefully, she ends up, her whole body flips over around her head. So I'll add that in as well. So anyway, the point is that maybe it's a good idea to practice and have a look at what your face does do, so that you can understand what it looks like. And you might be giving impressions that were completely unintended, or obviously you might be giving impressions that you did intend, but you prefer to keep private.
You mentioned resting bitch face. I should have added that one into that list I did about controlling face. Because the other thing that I looked up is that the other way of describing resting bitch face is your degaff face. As in, don't give a fuck. Don't give a fuck.
Okay, yeah.
I think I'm going to start calling my degaff face instead, because I quite like that. So probably won't go down well, especially if I'm trying to learn to control my face more. So my last one, because of course we did say control your face inner voice. I was quite surprised when I start doing searches and start doing research, and the inner voice stuff was all about, or mostly what kept coming up was about self-chat, what we say to ourselves, blah, blah, blah. And that's not really where we were going with this. I suppose in a way it is, because there's things that are going on inside you, but more often than not, what we're saying about leaks out onto our faces, usually when we're trying to curb anger or frustration or things like that. Whereas the inner voice, that self-chat, is usually when we're giving ourselves a really hard time. So that wasn't really fitting with what I was looking for. But then I came across a book, because you were saying about this is quite a somatic practice. And so it's no surprise that my gift is a little bit along that line. But the book is called Freeing the Natural Voice by Kristen Linklater. And she is a voice coach for actors and actresses. And so her book is a whole range of exercises so that your voice is embodied. So she starts with exercises which are really about the sound that you make. And then there's a whole piece around resonators. And of course, she talks about your resonators, that aid and abet the sound, come from your chest, your mouth, your teeth, your sinuses, your skull even. They're all part and parcel of the noise that we make in different situations and with different emotions behind it. And of course, then the third part of the book is much more relatable to those who are going to be up on stage acting. But equally, as a speaker, I think all of these things are really useful. Added to which, if you are standing up and talking to teams and being leaders and knowing how your voice and the sound that it's making and the effect that it has on other people, I thought that, again, that was really, really interesting. And this whole element about what we embody, which turns into a sound that comes out of our body.
Yeah, fascinating. My sister's into all of those sound exercises because she is an actress and does voiceover things. I'm not entirely sure what the correct word is. And I went to an incredible sauna session, actually, by the sea with a woman who is a singer, but also a sort of sound therapist, where we spent quite a long time doing all of these similar exercises that you do with a voice coach, but all on the sort of the fundamental sounds. And so ma, ta, and having to do them sort of quietly and louder and louder. And it was all a bit, well, it was very woo woo. And I have to say, my friend and I were a little bit about it. But at the end, the next day, I could really feel all of the muscles down my sides were aching because it was not something, there weren't muscles that we were using that often to really take advantage of all of the sounds and all of the expressiveness that we can do and be. So yeah, I love that idea. I love that. I've got loads of things to watch and read now. Thank you.
And she's got a whole website as well. I mean, I came across the book first, but again, when you go digging, there's all sorts of things and there's exercises and she's got stuff on video. So an interesting lady to follow, I think, was my takeaway.
Fabby. Well, that's it. That's our little gift session on dealing with your inner voice and how to help it not leak out, or at least if you're going to let it leak out, know what it's going to look like.
I have a quote.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, you can't control the contour of your face, but you can control its expression. Well, we'll see about that. You can't control the weather, but you can control the atmosphere of your mind. By John C. Maxwell.
Oh, yes. Cool. We're going to be hearing a little bit more about him in our next mini as well. So what a lovely segue.
Indeed. Very nice indeed.
All right then. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Check out the resources on our website or on Spotify for the inspiration and practices we've talked about. Next week, we're going to go back to basics. What or who is a leader? Is it a title or just a way of being? Come and join us next week with our Easter basket of gifts with, so what do you do?